The email controversy continues to dog the Clinton campaign. There are some new developments to tell you about in the Republican side and race for the White House, with Jeb Bush this morning unleashing some blunt choice words right here on the Fox News channel, criticizing Donald Trump.
Our ad simply uses his own language, his own words, to say that he is more a Democrat than a Republican, that he's for higher taxes rather than cutting taxes, that he believes in a single payer system, that he's not only pro-choice but believes in partial birth abortion. Those are his words, not mine. I didn't exaggerate a single thing.
Well, this comes as Mr. Trump's unique approach in many policy areas is changing the Republican landscape for this election cycle. For instance, he is promising to raise taxes and even impose tariffs on some American companies, as well as on some of those wealthy hedge fund managers. So what does this mean for the general election battle and the very future of the Republican Party itself? Julie Roginsky is a Fox News contributor and former political advisor to the late Senator Frank Lautenberg of New Jersey. David Avila, chairman of GOPAC, joins us. Julie and David, good to see you. David, let me start with you.
Thanks.
Good morning. Mr. Trump sounds almost more like Warren Buffett or Bernie Sanders on some of these corporate issues. What does this mean for the party? What does this do to the GOP?
Well, Mr. Trump certainly has gotten to the top of the polls because of many of his views. This isn't one that's going to bode well for him with Republican primary voters. And honestly, Eric, not just with Republican primary voters. There are Democrats and independents that aren't looking for taxes to be raised. GOPAC just commissioned a poll of swing state voters in Ohio, and the number one way they said their economic condition could be improved was by lowering taxes. So while Mr. Trump has many positions that will attract people to him, his position on wanting to raise taxes isn't one of them.
Well, Julie, I mean, he really is unorthodox, but he certainly has hit a nerve on some of these issues.
You know, it's really unbelievable to me to watch this. This is something that Democrats and President Obama have been saying for years now, including in May when President Obama said we need to raise taxes on people who run hedge funds and private equity. And he got pilloried by the Republican Party for it. All of a sudden, the Republican frontrunner says this, and the plurality of Republican voters seem to support his views. So I welcome the many members of the Republican Party to our views on higher taxes for those who don't pay their fair share. But I would like some in the Republican Party to acknowledge at least the hypocrisy in supporting a man who's saying a lot of the same things that those very same people pilloried the Democratic president for saying.
Yeah, and Julie and David, there's a lot out there today. In the Wall Street Journal, believe it or not, Bret Stephens likens him to Hugo Chavez. And take a look at what the Washington Post says. Trump is pressing a case against corrupt and cosmopolitan elites, against mass and illegal immigration, and the dilution of American identity, and against the economic dislocations of free trade and business capitalism. Were Trump to succeed, the GOP would be an anti-immigration party of the white working class. Ouch. David, is that too tough, or does that happen on target?
Well, look, 73%, going back to the poll GOPAC commissioned in Ohio, 73% of voters across the board, Republicans, Democrats, and independents, are for securing the border. So it's not as if Mr. Trump has a position that's outside the mainstream of American voters. In fact, he's right where American voters are on getting our border secure. Now, what those exact details, how those will flesh out, well, should he win and become our president, he'll have to work those out with Congress. But gosh, hearing Julie talk just a few seconds ago, it sounds like maybe the Trump campaign's hired her to advise on tax policy.
I'm just glad the plurality of the Republican voter has finally come around to my way of thinking. I welcome them to support my views. You know, I will say the one thing about Trump's immigration policy that David, my good friend David, seems to omit here is the fact that Donald Trump goes a little further than most people who want to secure the border. He wants to deport every person who's not here legally, as well as their natural-born American citizen children. And that is something that I think goes well above and beyond securing the border for most people, including
David,
most
Republicans. Is that even possible? You got 11 million illegal immigrants here.
And their kids who are citizens.
David, what do you do?
Look, it's a discussion we're going to have about how to make that happen. But, you know, Mr. Trump's also for defunding sanctuary cities, which is quite popular amongst. So, look, there's common ground that can be had, even with those on the left. There's common ground that can be had that's going to make our border more secure, that's going to make our country safer, and have a better immigration policy than what we have right now.
You know, David, you talk about the sanctuary cities. Kate Stanley's parents in court today in San Francisco suing them. That tragic tragic, horrible case allegedly killed by that illegal immigrant who was deported many times. Julie, you got to do something about this. And Trump certainly was right on it from the start.
Well, I'll tell you, Trump, sanctuary cities aside, what Trump is suggesting is essentially a demographic nightmare and catastrophe for the Republican Party going forward. When you're talking about deporting American citizens because they were born to people who are not here legally, but in fact are American citizens.
We're talking about the criminals who come and kill us.
But wait a second, he's talking about much more than the criminals. He's talking about people who have never committed a crime. He's talking about people who were born in this country. He's talking about people who are here legally, and the Supreme Court says that they have been and are. That's going a little above and beyond the guy that killed Kate Steinle. That's a demographic nightmare for the Republican Party waiting to happen.
Last word.
A lot of ideas are going to get proposed. Let's start rallying around those that we can all get behind. We can all get behind securing our border. We can all get behind defunding sanctuary cities. We can get policies in place that actually make our country safer. And Julie makes some legitimate points that are we ready to get rid of the 14th Amendment? There's no indication America's ready to do that. But guess what Mr. Trump has done? He's put the discussion on the table for our country to get to have that we've been having the last couple of years, but certainly he's put it front and center. And let's say one last thing. Certainly he wants people to know more about his immigration policy than his tax policy right now.
Well, you know, he's certainly shaking up this race, and we're all watching. Julie and Dave are out of time. Thank you.
Thanks very much.